Hi everyone, my name is Bhumika Chauhan. Welcome back to our channel. How are you all? So in today's video, we are going to study Nelson Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom. Such a beautiful chapter, such an important chapter from exam point of view. Like they literally ask a question from this chapter like every year. Okay, and they ask competency, like long answer type question from Nelson Mandela. There are so many important events, there are so many important terms that we need to know from this chapter. So yes, let's get started. Nelson Mandela over here in this chapter basically was inaugurated as president of South Africa on on May 10, I guess the date is. So he was an anti-apartheid activist. Okay, what is anti-apartheid activist? We will learn in this chapter. Okay, he was also a former political prisoner, right? So there are so many characters in this chapter: Nelson Mandela, Oliver, Walter, Chief, Yusuf, Bram and Robert. They are all important, and we will see that their names over there in the chapter with their pictures. Like they also struggled with Nelson Mandela so that they can achieve this freedom, and Nelson Mandela basically became the first black president of South Africa, right? So because of this they actually wanted a non-racial government. Everybody over there at that point of time was racist, like the black and the white, the racism, right? That is anti-apartheid, that they do not want racism, right? Yes, so it's an amazing chapter, and you will get to know that how these people struggled to achieve freedom that we have today. Okay, yes, the story draws freedom from racism, as I told you, is the central theme of the lesson Nelson Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom. So please do underline freedom from racism. What is racism? Black or white, right? So it is an excerpt from autobiography of Nelson Mandela, who was first black president of South Africa. So Nelson Mandela, as you all know, was the first black president of South Africa, and this chapter is basically taken from his autobiography. Okay, let's get started. Mandela becomes South Africa's first black president. Nelson Mandela has become South Africa's first black president after more than 3 centuries of white rule, right? And Mr. Mandela's African National Congress, ANC party, won 252 of 400 seats in the democratic elections of South African history. So they are giving basically the background of the story, like what has happened. Mandela became South Africa's first black president, and after more than 3 centuries of white rule. Okay, so after 3 centuries he became the president, and African National Congress party won 252 of the 400 seats. Okay, so the inauguration ceremony took place in the Union Buildings Amphitheatre in Pretoria today, attended by politicians and dignitaries from more than 140 countries around the world. Never again will this beautiful land experience the oppression of one by another, said Nelson Mandela in his address. Jubilant scenes on the streets of Pretoria followed the ceremony, with blacks, whites and coloreds celebrating together. More than 10,000 South African men, women and children of all races sang and danced with joy. Okay, so what is happening here? As you all can see, what is happening here? Yes, so the ceremony took place in the Union Buildings Amphitheatre in Pretoria. So ceremonies took place in a lovely sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union Buildings in Pretoria, and for decades this had been the seat of white supremacy, right? And now we can clearly see that the sight of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations, right? And they are here for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. Are you guys getting my point? Yes or no? So never again will this beautiful land experience the oppression by one another, said Nelson Mandela in his address. Jubilant scene on the streets of Pretoria, followed by the ceremonies with blacks and whites and colored. So it's a rainbow gathering, right? 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. So, what he is saying, that 10th May dawned bright and clear. 10th May is the day. It's a bright, sunny day. It's a beautiful day. And for the past few years, I had been pleasantly besieged as in surrounded by dignitaries and world leaders. So why he is surrounded by world leaders? Because everybody came to witness this historical moment. Everybody there came to witness that historical moment because it was happening after 3 centuries. Right? And union buildings, right? The union buildings, they form a kind of amphitheater, right? Which was where the ceremony will take place. Right? And this amphitheater was made up of sandstone. Okay? Okay, everyone. So Mandela calls this space lovely sandstone amphitheater. Okay. The ceremonies took place in lovely sandstone amphitheater formed by the union buildings in Pretoria. And for decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy. Mandela adds that union buildings had been the center of white dominance for decades. And that's why this is the perfect place, right? The ceremony had, the ceremony had instead made it the location of a rainbow gathering. Like now it was the site of rainbow gathering of different colors. Rainbow gathering of people of all colors, white, black, and nationalities. That's why he's saying rainbow gathering of different colors and nations of the installation of South Africa's first democratic and non-racial government. So they all are here to witness this historical moment. Like they all are here of people of different color, people of different nationalities, right? They all are here in South Africa to witness South Africa's first democratic and non-racial government. Okay. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zenani on the podium. Mr. De Klerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote myself to the well-being, right, of the republic and its people, to the assembled guests and the watching world, I said. So, on that lovely autumn day, why he's saying that it was a lovely autumn day? And he was with his daughter Zenani. Like Zenani is basically her daughter, his daughter. Yes, वो उसकी बेटी. I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, so I was accompanied by my daughter. So he is here with her daughter. On the podium, Mr. De Klerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. So first, who took the oath first? Second deputy president, Mr. De Klerk. Then Thabo Mbeki took the oath as first deputy president. And when it was my turn, and when it was obviously Nelson Mandela's turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the constitution. So I basically pledged that I will follow our constitution and I will respect our constitution, right? So his daughter Zenani, like his daughter Zenani is here with him, and ex-president Mr. De Klerk and a fellow member, obviously, right? Thabo Mbeki, they took oath first, and Mandela states over here. Why I am taking so much time? Because it's an important chapter, guys. You need to know each and every detail. They can ask you question from anywhere, right? So Thabo Mbeki, after Thabo Mbeki, Mandela states that his daughter joined him on that beautiful autumn day. And who was Zenani? Zenani was basically one of Mandela's 6 children. She was one of Mandela's 6 children. Right? So in his first, I guess, marriage with Evelyn Mays, yes, I think Evelyn Mays, he had 4 children, and yes, I think she was the one, right? Okay. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the republic. That I will devote myself, I will do everything for this country, right? All these things. He was ready and he obviously pledged. To the assembled guests and the watching world, I said. So what did he say? Today, all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Very important point. Why he is saying newborn liberty? Please do underline. It is important. Why is he saying newborn liberty? Yes, I guess Zenani was from his second marriage. Like with Winnie Mandela, yes, Zenani was from the second marriage. Like Zenani and Zinzi, I think the daughter's name. Yes, Zinzi Mandela, right. So, yes. Today all of us do by our presence here. He's saying that, yes, everyone is here and in all your presence. Confer glory, confer as in your, or give. And glory, hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster, very important point, they often ask a question that why he calls the experience an extraordinary human disaster. Why he says that it is an extraordinary human disaster? Why he says that? Tell me. He is saying that I will, I will, obey and respect the constitution. I will commit myself to the, republics and people's well-being. Right? And he is addressing the gathering and the world basically over here, over there. Right? Yahan pe. That was watching. So he's addressing all these people. And that's why he says, today all of us do by our presence here confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. What is extraordinary human disaster? Why he says that? Can you please tell me in the comment section? It was cruel for these people. It was a human disaster. They were treated like hell by these white people. They did not have any right. They did not have the basic human right. They were dragged to the prison. They were beaten up like anything, right? And they were devoid of the basic needs, of basic survival needs, like the things that we need to survive. They were not welcomed anywhere, not in any university, not in any hospital. They were treated like I would say badly, right? So that's why he's saying it was an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, obviously, must born a society of which all humanity must be proud, must be born a society of. And that extraordinary human disaster created a society, gave birth to a society of which all humanity will be proud. Now, because of that suffering, Because of that suffering basically gave birth to such a society which all humanity will be proud of. That now no one is going to experience what they had in the past. Right? This is what he's trying to say. That this ends here. This is the end. He is talking about the multi-racial gathering over here. Right? And they all are here, and he's very glad that they all are here. And he's calling it a newborn liberty. And he basically adds that a society worthy of all humanity must emerge from the ashes of an extraordinary disaster that basically lasted for so long. Right? We who were outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege. We were outlaws. Why he is saying that? Very important point. Very, very, very important. They ask questions that we who were outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege. Human disaster, first thing here. Reference to the apartheid system. Write it down. What is apartheid system? Discrimination between white and black. Right? So he is calling apartheid system a human disaster that existed in South Africa, and during that apartheid he's talking about he is talking about his race. He says that they who were once treated as criminals, outlaws, that people treated his race as criminals, now have today been given the rare privilege. So now they will enjoy, they have basically begun to enjoy the uncommon distinction of hosting nations from all over the world on their own turf. Everyone is here on their own soil, privileged to host the nations of the world. That everybody is here, and we are getting this privilege for the very first time in our life. And he is thanking the eminent international guests. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country. Because it's a common victory for justice. People of our country, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. Right? So they have basically achieved what? We have at last achieved our political emancipation. What is political emancipation? Freedom from restrictions. Political freedom from restrictions. We pledged ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender and other discrimination. Very important. Please do underline these lines in your book. Never, never and never again. Like see, he's emphasizing never, never and never again. Shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. Why he's saying? He's saying never, never and never again. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. We have at last achieved. Now he's saying that at last everything paid off. The struggle, the sacrifice that our people, our people sacrificed basically everything for this day. And you will see that he will thank those people. He will say that his heart aches right now because they are not here to enjoy right? Because they sacrificed, they worked, they struggled for this day, right? And he's saying, let freedom reign, God bless. So he's saying they have finally achieved political freedom. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty. Now he's saying that I will try my best to basically eliminate poverty, basically deprivation, suffering, gender and other discrimination. So I will try to delete all these bad things from our nation. Deprivation, like we were not given, we were not blessed, we were not given the basic human rights. So I'm not going to do that from now on, right? He says that they had finally attained political independence, and he also says that they would pledge to free all their people from the shackles of poverty, suffering, gender discrimination, and other forms of prejudice. So he is speaking against oppression and discrimination. He is oppression and discrimination. He is speaking against these two things, right? And he says that, and he's kind of making a promise that there wouldn't never, like, again would his wonderful land be like subjected to the oppression of one by another. No one is going to feel what they actually, no one is going to, I would say, he is basically trying to say that he will continue his fight against racial discrimination, right? And he's saying that he is sure that the sun would never set on such a magnificent human accomplishment. It's a magnificent human accomplishment, right? A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers roared in perfect formation over the Union buildings, right? It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. So this government is basically freely and fairly elected, right? Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and Police, their chests begged with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. Very important point. They ask question from this point. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would not have saluted but arrested me. Yes, definitely. Because they treated them like hell. Why? Right? So finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue and gold of the new South African flag. So what is happening here? Have you seen the passing out parade on 26th of January, like India Gate, Delhi, right? So it's kind of, it's like that picture. All the jets in the air, everyone, he's saying, a few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets. What a spectacular array, an impressive display, right? They were basically flying. There were jets and helicopters and troop carriers, that rod in perfect formation, like they were like in a perfect formation and with colors and everything, and it looked beautiful. There was a beautiful display, right? So there was a stunning area of South African planes and helicopters and troop carriers, and they blasted in perfect formation basically above that Union building, right? A few moments later when he was saying all these things, so everybody was looking up and they were enjoying the fact that how beautiful it is, right? And they all basically gasped, like they were astonished, like they are saying, like, we have lost achieve here. We all lifted our eyes in awe, like they were astonished. What is awe? They were like, wow, it's beautiful, right? So it was basically like he's saying na, ki careers rod in perfect formation, like pinpoint precision. So it was not only a show of pinpoint precision, like how accurately they can do this, and they were not showing the military might. It was basically symbol of military's commitment to democracy, to a new government that had been elected freely and fairly. That's what they are trying to convey. Like, we are committed to democracy. So they are showing this. They are committed to this new government. And they are showing this through this pinpoint precision. Right? And he recalls, obviously. Right? He recalls that loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. So only a few moments before the highest general of South African Defence Force and Police, what he's saying now, he recalls during the ceremony the senior generals of South Africa Defence, right? Their chest bedecked with ribbons. So there are so many medals and so many ribbons over here from days gone by. Saluted me and pledged their loyalty. Very important point. They saluted him and swore their loyalty, and their chests adorned with ribbons and medals from days gone by. Right? So he was reminding the fact that not so long ago, they would not have saluted but arrested him. They would not have saluted but arrested me because of the racial discrimination thing. Because they were ruling the country. They were not free on their own land. They were not feeling safe on their own land. Finally, a chevron of Impala jet left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, gold, the new South African flag. And finally, adding a final touch to the display, a chevron of, Impala jets left a smoke trail of black, of the black, red, green, blue, gold. Okay. So these were the colors in new South African flag, right? So this day basically was a very important day, right? And one more thing that he did was, the day was symbolized for me by the playing of two national anthems and the vision of whites singing Nkosi Sikelel iAfrika and blacks singing Die Stem. So these are basically two national anthems, right? The old anthem of Republic, although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem, they once despised as in they have a very low opinion of, and they would soon know the words by heart. So he was saying that maybe these people over here don't know the words, they don't know what is the meaning, they don't know what is this national anthem right now, but soon they will remember each and everything. They would soon know the words by heart. Okay, and why he is doing this? Like the vision of whites singing Nkosi Sikelel iAfrika and blacks singing Die Stem, the old anthem of Republic. Why he is doing that? Why two national anthems? Think about it. The playing of their two national anthem, and basically the sight Everyone there singing together. Like the white people also chanting, Nakosaki, Sikelel, E Africa. And the blacks are singing Dice Them, the old anthem of the Republic. Why two national anthem? Because he wants to symbolize that we are a unit. We are not different people now. Right? He is trying to convey the message that there is no discrimination in this country. There is no scope of discrimination in this country. This is a beautiful day, and he made sure that basically the people he will eventually memorize, right, the anthems. And here neither group knew the lyrics of them. Like neither of them knew the lyrics of anthem. Right? Yes. Because they formally disliked that because of the discrimination. Like the white people don't know the lyrics of the other one, and the black people do not know, obviously, right, the lyrics. So on the day of inauguration, like this is a beautiful thing. They once despised means they once disliked, and now they are singing the same thing over here. So this shows that this is a newborn liberty, right? On the day of inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War, and before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their land. So what did they do? On the day of inauguration, I was overwhelmed as in he was feeling so many emotions at that time, with a sense of history. So he was remembering all these people who helped to achieve this newborn liberty. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War, so he's talking about after like Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, and he's talking also about before his own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination. So what did they do? They all came together and they created this system. What is this system? Racial domination. That the white will rule over black people. Dark-skinned people of their own land. And on their own land. It's not like of some other country. No, on their own land they will do this discrimination. They are going to treat these people below them. They are going to rule. They are not going to give any right to these people. They are not allowed to sit where white people sit. They are not allowed to eat where white people eat. They are not allowed to get education where white people get education. Right? So he is thinking about that part. When he was not even born, they did this. All these white people of South Africa, they patched up their differences and they thought of this cruel racial domination against black-skinned people. Right? So he's feeling very emotional that why did they do this? Right? You cannot judge someone by color, caste, religion, by the appearance. It's not like if he's black, he's a bad person. If he's white, he's a good person. No, not at all. Right? Yes. So I hope you got the point. What he's trying to say, he's basically remember all these things, like how this happened, right? And why this happened, right? So he's basically remembering all these things. On the day of inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history in the first decade of 20th century. Okay, we already did this. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhumane societies the world has ever known. So he's right. He is right. The structure they created, this apartheid structure they created, this was the harshest, the most inhumane, right? Yes. Okay. Okay, let's go. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all people regardless the color of their skin. So Mandela was overcome with a sense of history over here, like on the day of the inauguration, right? And how they actually created this system, how they established a system of racial control over these against the dark skinned people, like of their own land, right? And he was talking about, I guess, Anglo-Boer War, right? Before Anglo-Boer War. Yes. So the structure they created was very brutal, very harsh, right? And it was one of the world's darkest and most cruel societies. And now he's saying that he had overturned. That system had been overturned forever and replaced by. So the system had been overthrown forever, overturned as in overthrown forever in the last decade of 20th century. And now what he's saying, in his own 8th decade as a man, in his own 8th decade as a man, he is saying that system had been overturned forever and replaced by that recognized the rights. So this system talks about the rights, the liberties of all people, regardless of the skin color, doesn't matter. And this day, how this day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people, people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. Now he's talking about all these freedom fighters. He's thinking about, he's remembering all these freedom fighters, and he says that that day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices. Again, underline. You cannot imagine the sacrifice that these guys did, right? Of thousands. And he's saying thousands of my people, people whose suffering and courage can never be counted. We cannot count and we cannot pay, right? Like that's like a treasure. That's the most expensive thing we have, valuable thing we have. Because of them, we are standing here. And they are not able to see what their sacrifices basically had wrought. So he was feeling overwhelmed. He's feeling all these emotions, that because of all these people, because of these thousands of people, like I felt that I will have so many other days that I was simply the sum of, like I am here basically the sum of all these people, like all these African patriots who gone before me, right? That long and noble line ended, and now it's not going to happen again. Right? Thousands of Mandela's people had basically made inconceivable sacrifices, right? People whose sorrow and courage could never be counted and never be reimbursed. You cannot. So that day, as on so many others, he felt that he was nothing more but the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before him. Right? And he's saying that long and noble dynasty now came to an end and began again with him. And he was basically feeling hurt. I was pained that I was not able to thank them. He was feeling hurt because he could not thank the patriots. Right? And that they could not see their efforts, like what they actually did, what their efforts had accomplished. They are not here to witness that thing. And this is hurting. Right? Yes. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tambos. Yes, very important part of the chapter. Like, because of that sacrifice, we have Oliver Tambo, Walter Chief, Yusuf, Bram, Robert of our time, men of such extraordinary courage. He calls them men of such extraordinary courage. Like we have Bhagat Singh. Right? Because of those bad days, we got Bhagat Singh. We have Bhagat Singh. But we don't want our people to suffer that pain, that slavery again. And that's what he's saying. That the policy of apartheid, because of that racial discrimination, that wound, that deep lasting wound in my country and my people, that this racial discrimination system, that apartheid system created this wound in my chest, that no one can cure this. All of us will spend many years, if not generations. It's not like we can forget each and everything in one day. We cannot forget. Right? We cannot forget. This is very deep hurt, right? But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced. And he's saying that all this brutality, all this oppression only created this effect, which is like Oliver Tambo, Walter Chief, Yusuf. These are the men of such extraordinary courage. Wisdom and generosity that their like may never be known again. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression that you need that much of oppression to have characters like this, to have people like this. Otherwise, we would never have known who all these people are. So he's saying apartheid system left a significant and a long lasting wound in South Africa. And obviously in people. And he's saying that they will all need so many years to get over. Like if not years, generations to heal from that hurt, to heal from that great loss. But again, he's saying that brutality, that oppression of years, of decades, that had an unintended consequence, an unintended result. It produced these people. Oliver Tambo, Walter, Chief Luthuli, Yusuf Dadoo. Right? So please do remember 2 to 3 names so that you can write in your answer. Right? That their like may never be known again. They were men of such extraordinary courage, extraordinary wisdom, extraordinary generosity that their like may never be known again. And he clearly thinks it requires such depths of oppression, Such tyranny was required to achieve such great heights of character. Right? My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people. Its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. So now what he is saying? His country's soil is rich in minerals. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil. So he's saying my country is rich in minerals and gems. But I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people. But he declares that he had always understood that South Africa's greatest asset is its people, who are finer, who are more truer, I guess, than the purest diamonds. Like, you cannot compare a diamond and a South African. Right? It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear. Very important line, very important line, that courage is not. What is courage according to Nelson Mandela? Very popular question. Multiple time asked. But the triumph over it, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear. Like, if you say that I am courageous, that doesn't mean you don't fear anything. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not the one who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So he's saying that if you fear, if you have that fear in yourself, that doesn't mean that you are not courageous. If you try to overcome, and if you overcome that fear, then you are courageous. It doesn't mean that you are a coward if you fear something. So he's saying it's because of these people that Mandela had discovered basically the meaning of courage. Like, because of them, I right now know the meaning of courage. He claims over here, I have seen men, women risk and give their lives for an idea. He claims basically that he had seen men and women. They lost their lives for an idea. On several occasions, I have seen men stand up to attacks and tortures without breaking. Like, they have been attacked, they have been tortured, but they did not break. He had witnessed all these things. Showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination, that you cannot even imagine the amount of strength they have. They demonstrate basically a tenacity and resilience that was beyond your imagination, that was beyond belief. You cannot even believe, like, how can this person, how can this person bear so many things? And that's how he basically discovered that courage was not, like, courage was the triumph over fear, not the absence of fear. Very important, please do underline, very important. A brave person is not the one who is fearless, but the one who overcomes fear. Very important, again I am saying. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. Again, very important point. That we are not born we are not born as if hating another person. Like, it was not like when I was born, I used to hate black people. No. It was the society. It was the background who basically inculcated all these things in me. Our parents, our society told us that this is right, this is wrong. Our society told us that black is this, white is this, upper class, lower class, middle class. We are Hindu, he is Muslim, we are not equal. Society told us all these things. We were not born with that hatred in us. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. Yes. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, like when we were at our worst, when we were at our worst, when they were treating us with brutality, like they were treating us, they were doing torture, they were trying to break us. Just for a second, but it was enough to reassure. I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. Then he says that everybody is not like, everybody is not same. No one is born hating another person because of his or her color, right? Because of the religion, because of the ethnicity. No, not at all. Not because of the background. And people must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can learn to love. They can be taught to love. Right? Because love comes more naturally, he's trying to say. More readily, he's trying to say. We have to teach hatred. But love comes naturally than hatred. Right? So when Mandela and his friends were pushed to their limits in prison, he's saying, to the human heart, then it's opposite. Even in the grimmest time in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, while they were beating us, while they were torturing us, he would see glimmer. He would see glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. Like, maybe he could see, for a split second that he is a good person. Like that person must have shown some sympathy or must have shown some kindness or compassion. And he says that if only for a split second, but it was enough for me to reassure him and, keep him going. The goodness of a man is a flame that can be smothered but never exhausted. Everyone has, every man has this goodness. We all have goodness in our hearts, right? It just, he's saying that man's goodness is a flame. It's like a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. Like you can hide that goodness, but you cannot extinguish that. I always feel bad whenever I, read this chapter. In life, every man has twin obligations. Very, very, very important. He talks about twin obligations. So they will ask, what are these twin obligations? Obligation to his family. So obligation is basically duty to his parents, to his wife and children. And he has an obligation to his people, his community, his country. Take it. In a civil and humane society, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities, obviously. We all have these twin obligations. We all have these two duties, one towards our family and one towards our nation. And if you are in a country, in a free country, you are able to fulfill these two duties according to your inclination, whether you want to, fulfill your duty towards your nation or towards your family, but you are the one who can decide this thing. Right? So, but in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth of my color, because of the racial discrimination, to fulfill both of those obligations. Like we people were not able to. If we want to fulfill our duty towards our nation, then these people are going to beat us, these people are going to torture us, these people will drag us to prison, and they will do everything of their caliber so that we cannot live freely in this country, so that no one else would dare to do these things, no one else would dare to raise a voice of freedom. They treated people like this so that they can set examples, like if you want to fulfill your duty towards a nation, or if you want to fulfill your duty towards your family, this is not possible. If you are fulfilling your duty towards your family, you have to hide. If you are fulfilling your duties towards your nation, you will be dragged to the prison. So he was not able to, right? In South Africa, a man of color. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated, right? In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family, like unavoidably ripped apart from his family, that you cannot stay with your family if you are doing something for your nation, for your people. So if you are a freedom fighter, if you want to do something for your nation, then you cannot live with your family. They are going to rip you apart from your family. They are going to torture you. Twilight existence of secrecy. Very nice term, very important term. Twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family. Like in the starting, I was not like this. But in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son. But as the time passed, obviously, he realized that he is not able to, he was prevented from fulfilling my obligation as a son. Like I cannot fulfill my duty as a son, as a brother, as a father, as a husband. Right? So in a country like South Africa, and a man with this color, they could never fulfill both those commitments. A guy of color who attempted, of color means of black color, who attempted to live as a human being in South Africa was punished and was secluded. Right? They did not allow black people to basically live as a human being in South Africa. They did not allow. He was prevented. He's clearly saying, my people above my family. In the starting, like he was not aware of all these things, what is happening. Right? Yes. So it's I think heartening. Like, oh God, how they must have, you know, like how they would have survived all this. I don't know. So, because he's clearly saying, a man who tried to do his duty to his people was separated from his family, and he was forced to live a life of concealment, of disobedience. Right? He did not choose to prioritize his family or his people. Like in the beginning, he's saying that I was not the one, I did not prioritize my nation over my family at first. But in doing so, like through the process, he realized that he was not able to fulfill his responsibilities as a son, as a brother, as a sister, as a husband. No, he was not able to do anything. Yes. I was not born with a hunger to be free. Very important. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was born free in every way that I could know. Free to run in the fields near my mother's hut. Free to swim in the clear stream that ran through my village. Free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad backs of slow-moving bulls. As long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe, I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. So it feels like he's talking about he's talking like a normal child, that for me freedom was just like, I was not born with a hunger of freedom, right? If I am allowed to run in the fields near my mother's hut, I felt free. These were the trivial things that I wanted at that time, and I thought that this is freedom. And he's saying, as long as I obeyed my father and I followed the custom of my tribe, like followed the customs of my tribe, then I felt I was not troubled by the laws of men or of laws of God. He's saying that, he's clearly saying that. And he's saying that I was not born like this, right? He was not born with a desire to be liberated. He was born free. Free in every sense, he's saying. Free in every way that I could know. He was free to run around the field near his mother's hut, right? Free to swim in the clear stream that ran through his village, right? Free to roast mealies under the stars. So he was free to run around the field, surrounding his mother's hut, and swim in the clear river, and ran through the village and roast everything. So he was doing all these small cute little things, ride the broad backs of bulls, and this is freedom. This was a freedom for him. He was unconcerned about the laws of man. He was unconcerned about the laws of God, because as long as he respected his father's, he respected his father and respected basically the laws of community, or followed the practices of his tribe, he felt free. He never felt like he wanted freedom, right? It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion. What an amazing turning point. Right? He's saying it was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me. That I began to hunger for it at first as a student. I wanted freedom only for myself. The transitory freedoms, like these are important points. Illusion, transitory as in temporary. Freedom of being able to stay out at night, read what I pleased, and go where I choose. Right? So later he is saying, as a young man, he just wanted, basic honorable freedoms of achieving like his potential of, I discovered a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me. I began to hunger for it. As first I wanted freedom for myself. First he wanted freedom for himself. The transitory freedoms of being able to stay out so that he can stay out. That's freedom for him. Still, he is not realizing what is freedom. But he's saying that earlier, like the freedom to run around the hut and everything, that was nothing. That was an illusion. As a young man, he felt that he has already been taken from, that freedom has been taken from him. I began to hunger for it. Like as a student, he wanted freedom for myself, the transitory freedoms of, like freedom, small things he wanted, like transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night, read what I pleased, and go where I choose. Everyone thinks like that. Every teenager thinks like this. Right? So he realized that his youth independence was a mirage. And as a young man, his freedom had already been taken away. Yes or no? And then he began to crave for it. Then he started craving it. And as a student, he's saying that I wanted temporary freedoms, like being allowed to stay out, late at night, read whatever he wanted, and go wherever he pleased. But later, as a young man, in Johnsburg, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying, having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. So now, as a young man in Johnsburg, he ached for the basic and honorable freedom, like of realizing his potential, making a living, marrying and starting a family, the right to live a lawful life without being locked, not to be obstructed in a lawful life. Right? But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. Now he's realizing that this is because of the color. This is because the way I look. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed. He's saying that it's not like I am the only person who is who has not given this who is deprived of this freedom, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. So everyone out there like me, who looked like me, is suffering the same thing, struggling through the same thing, right? And that is when I joined the African National Congress. And that is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. That was the time he realized all these things. That I have to do something. It was the desire for freedom. Not for himself, but for his people. Because he wanted everyone to live with dignity and self-respect, clearly. Right? I saw that it was not just, okay. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect that animated my life, that transformed a frightened young man into a bold one, that drove a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal, that turned a family-loving husband into a man without a home, that forced a life-loving man to live like a monk. So he said, I became all these things because of the desire for freedom. I wanted freedom, and it was this desire for freedom for my people, so that they can live their lives with respect, with dignity, that animated my life. Like, this thing obviously changed my life, that transformed a frightened young man. Earlier I used to be very frightened. Earlier I was not that bold. Earlier I was not that strong. Earlier I was not that courageous. Right? He's clearly saying that. All these things transformed him. That transformed a frightened young man into a bold one. He was earlier, he used to be frightened. Now he's saying that because I wanted freedom for my people and I had that hunger, I became bold. That draw a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal. Like earlier I used to follow all the rules and regulations and all the laws, but now I was a criminal because I was not doing what they were asking me to do, because it was not right. Because, right, obviously, that turned a family-loving husband. Earlier I used to be a person who loves his family into a man without a home. And just because I started following all these things, I started doing my duty towards my twin obligations. So I was more inclined towards my nation, and as soon as I did that, that forced a life-loving man to live like a monk. So why? All these things happened. All these things happened because of apartheid system, right? Yes or no? All these things happened because of this cruel system, because of this brutal system. And now it was this desire, right? It's basically turning a family-loving husband into a man without a home and forcing basically a life-loving man to live like a monk. Okay? So he's saying that he was no more noble or selfless than the average man, but he basically discovered that he could not appreciate the poor, the limited liberties he was granted. Right? He cannot live like this. I found that I could not even, he's saying now, I am no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man, but I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedoms I was allowed. Right? When I knew my people were not free. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were the chains on me. He always felt that the chains on any of his people were the chains on all of his people. It's not like you are only chained. We all are chained. And the chains on all of his people were the chains on him. Very important. Yes. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. Very important. He knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. He's saying that we both need liberty. It's not like we only need liberty. You also need liberty. Why? Because you are in the shackles of hatred. You are in the shackles of hatred. That should not be there. It's not a right thing. It's not normal. He's locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. Like he has this small brain. He has this narrow-mindedness. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom. If I take away your freedom, I am not a free person. I am in the shackles of hatred, of prejudice. Just as surely as I am not free when freedom is taken from me. Right? So the oppressed and the oppressor are robbed of their humanity. Very, very, very important. Very important. So he's clearly saying, if you think that the oppressor is free, no, it's not true. Oppressor is equally in the shackles of hatred and prejudice, and he is also not free. If I am doing such thing, I am not living a good life. I do not have the right mental state. I am not enjoying my life. If I'm beating someone up, that doesn't mean I'm happy with that. If I am making you cry, that doesn't mean I'm happy with that. Right? So Mandela recognized that oppressor is also like a victim that needed to be freed. A person basically who takes away another person's liberty and their freedom, he is also a prisoner of hatred, man. He is also a prisoner of hatred. He is imprisoned by prejudice. He is clearly saying that. He is imprisoned by narrow-mindedness. Am I right? Yes or no? So Mandela realized, he clearly realized that it's not like he was not completely free, right? If he is robbing someone else's freedom, he's saying, no, someone else's freedom. If I'm taking away someone else's freedom, I'm also not free. Right? Just like he was not genuinely free when his freedom was taken away. So he believed that both the victims, like both the victim and the oppressor, like both of them lose their humanity in the act of injustice, like apartheid. Right? We all lost our humanity. No one is born hating another person because, yes, and that's it. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin. He says a very famous line. Or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Nelson Mandela. Thank you so much. I feel like that's enough, right? And If you want the important words, the keywords, the key events of this chapter, let me show you something. All the important events are there. Okay, so episode 1, the inauguration, a new beginning for South Africa. The important event, a very powerful setting, like why the event was held at Union Buildings in Pretoria, because that was the center of, like for 3 decades, that was the center of the white people, like supremacy of white people, right? So holding the ceremony there showed that old racist system was over, and people from all over the world attended that ceremony. That clearly shows that this is a newborn liberty, that they all are here to support this new democratic government that has been elected freely, right? Then the ceremony and the speech. First, they both took this, were sworn in as deputy president. Then Mandela took oath and he promised to support the constitution and obviously work for the people in South Africa. And he said that this is the end of apartheid. Now, this will not happen again in this country. Like, this is basically a human disaster that happened. He's calling apartheid a human disaster. I told you it's important. The start of, and basically this is the end of apartheid and start of like a newborn liberty. And he thanked the world for supporting the victory, right? Like the victory for justice. They were all here to support Nelson Mandela. They were all here to support this new government, right? And that's why he called rainbow gathering, because everyone was there, of every color, of every nationality, right? Then military's show of support. So that was a flyover by South African military jets, and that clearly showed that they are also committed to the new democratic government, right? They were showing their support to this new government, and he was clearly saying that they would not have done this few years back, right? This proved that power had truly shifted from old government to the new democratic one. The same generals who had enforced apartheid now saluted him, right? Then remembering the past, he remembered the past, like Mandela felt the weight of history on that day. He remembered all the people who struggled and sacrificed, right? The white minority government had created basically a cruel system of racial control. They all patched up, they all joined and created this apartheid system. On their own land, they created this discrimination, that we will not give all the rights to these black people that look like this, right? So it was built an unimaginable sacrifice, very important, unimaginable sacrifice of thousands of people who fought before him. So he was remembering all these people. Mandela knew apartheid left a deep wound, and he knew that it would take a long time, right? Because that such terrible operation can create amazing leaders. And he also said that obviously because of that tyranny, because of that level of tyranny, because of that level of oppression, then only we get such types of people, like amazing leaders. It produced people like Oliver, Walter, who showed incredible courage and goodness, right? After that, he is talking about true courage. Like, what is true courage? The true courage is not about being fearless. Like, it is about overcoming that fear, like triumph or victory over that fear. That is true courage. It's not the absence of fear, basically he's trying to say. That if you are courageous, that doesn't mean it's the absence of fear. If courage is basically triumph over fear. That is the real definition of courage. And he learned this definition during this period only. Hate is learned, it can be unlearned and replaced with love, he clearly says, right? Even in prison, a small act of kindness from a guard gave him hope that people are naturally good. We teach them how to hate, and love comes naturally. So there is no need to teach them hate. It's easier to teach love, and it's hard to teach hate, because love comes naturally. right? And the final chapter, basically Mandela shows understanding of freedom changed over his life, like how this understanding of freedom, like earlier freedom was like just to freely run around, run like around his mother's hut, or to sit on a bull's back and take a bath in the clear stream. But after few after a particular stage, he realized that he wanted some transitory freedom, like I want to stay late at home, like at night I want to stay outside, right? If I'm whether I am like he used to think that it is a kind of freedom if I am staying outside late at night, that is some type of freedom. But eventually he realized that this is temporary freedom, this is not the real freedom. Okay? And under apartheid, a black person who tried to serve the family, then he talks about two important responsibilities, twin obligations, and he says that we all have two main jobs in our life, one for the family, one for the community. Under apartheid, a black person who tried to serve the community was often taken from their family. So if you try to serve your community, you will taken away. You will be you will be taken away from your people, and you will be forced to live a life like a monk. Okay. So how his idea of freedom grew? As a boy, Mandela felt free. He could run, play without worry. As a student, he wanted personal freedoms like staying out late. As a young man, he wanted the right to have a job and a family. But later he saw that not only he was not free, but all black people were not free. And that was the turning point. This changed his goal from wanting freedom for himself to wanting freedom for his entire people. After that, freedom is for everyone. He says freedom is indivisible. You cannot divide freedom, that this is for like only white people can have freedom and black people cannot. You cannot do that, right? And one more thing, that if you cannot be truly free if others are still in chains, like if you have this prejudice, if you have this hatred in yourself that this person is bad, this person is black, this person doesn't deserve this, if you have prejudice, then you are also not free. You also need freedom. You are also needed to be liberated, right? The oppression of his people meant he was also not free. He even said the oppressors, the white people who supported apartheid, were not free either. They were trapped by their own hatred and prejudice, right? So what are the key terms? Apartheid, inauguration, rainbow gathering, union buildings, white supremacy, extraordinary human disaster, political emancipation, political freedom, poverty, deprivation, military's loyalty, sense of history, unimaginable sacrifices. So these are all the important points from the chapter. You can take a screenshot, you can underline, you can write them down. Okay, I will clearly give these notes in the description. I will provide the notes in the description. And these are few short questions. Please do practice such types of questions, like describe the value of freedom for human beings and how it is important for growth of civilization and humanism as described in the lesson Nelson Mandela. What is the value of freedom for human beings? Now you have to prove this point using all the important events from the chapter. You do not have to write summary over here in such types of questions. Okay. Both Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela, and The Trees by Adrian Rich. See, 2 chapters. Now he will combine the theme. Rich explores the themes of transformation, liberation and the power to change. Write down. Both these chapters talk about this theme. Now compare and give reason. Okay. Examine the commonality of theme in both these chapters. So you can clearly see. The Ball poem, Berryman explores the theme of loss, growing up and transformation. Mandela also experienced loss of freedom and suffering along with his countrymen during his growing years on the basis of his race and color. Compare and contrast the commonality of themes in both the text again. So you will be facing such types of question in your board's exam. Do not take it lightly. Please practice such questions. Write your answers. Practice writing. You will feel like you know everything, but whenever you start writing, you feel like you cannot remember anything. How should I start? What should I write? What should be the first paragraph? How should I compare and then contrast whatever he is asking you to do? Right? How am I going to do that? After that, why does Nelson Mandela feel very strongly about an extraordinary human disaster? I told you it's important. What effect does the experience as described in the lines below have on speaker? Time and again, I have seen men and women risk their lives for an idea. They give you one line from the chapter and they will ask, what does it mean? Select one inference about the idea of courage from the given context. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear. I told you the definition of courage is very important according to Nelson Mandela. How does this perspective differ from question number 11? According to the author, what does true courage entail? How does this perspective differ from common misconceptions about courage? Okay. Next one is Nelson Mandela in his inauguration speech says, we who were outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege to be host of the nations of the world on our own soil. What is the significance of this statement with reference to the political system that prevailed before this? Please do write all these questions in your notebook and make sure that you know the answer. Again, next one. In the chapter A Baker from Goa, the narrator talks about his childhood in Goa and his fond memories, right? In about 120 words, write a presentation draft comparing the childhood of the narrator in A Baker from Goa to that of Nelson Mandela. Okay? Again, the comparison based question. You may begin this way. He's giving you a hint that you can begin like this. Next one, a desire is more personal whereas a vision has broader connotations. You have been asked to present an analysis of Valli's desire and Mandela's vision. See, now he's comparing two characters and how they are respectively fulfilled. Nice. Next one, write this presentation draft including your insights in about 120 words comparing the approaches of both Valli and Mandela. You may begin like this, again giving you a hint, like how can you start your answer. Okay. So, I wish and I hope you liked today's session. If you have any doubt, you can ask me in the comment section. Please subscribe to the channel and do like the video. Bye-bye everyone. Take care. All the best. And it's an important chapter, okay? So please do not take it lightly. Practice all the questions, read the chapter again and go through all the important events, all the like twin obligations and courage and the definition of freedom, right? And that freedom is indivisible. Everything is important. Please make sure that you know these terms and you know the meaning why he used these terms. Okay everyone, bye-bye. Take care. All the best.